The sewing workshop has a lot of patterns that have very asymmetric lines to them. And we've had some questions about how to lengthen or shorten some of these really unique styles. Specifically, we've had some questions about the Tremont Jacket, which is displayed here. You can see that the two fronts are very different. They hang on the diagonal, even though they're cut on the straight of grain. And so sometimes you just don't know what to do. On our patterns, we always have a lengthen and shorten line. And you can see in this case on the Tremont, this is in a very unique place. So you need to pay attention to where that is. You also need to find the straight of grain line. And that's the line that has the points at each end. There are some other lines going on this pattern, a diagonal line for the center front. But for the purpose of lengthening or shortening this particular pattern, all you need to know is where the lengthen and shorten line is and the straight of grain line. All the other lines are not important at this point. The very first thing you want to do is to take a piece of pattern paper or tracing paper and trace the side seam line. So I'm going to trace that on the extra small. I'm using a big red marker, which you will not use necessarily, although it's pretty handy. I don't use magic markers for pattern work. Generally, I use a red pencil, but I want you to be able to see it. So that's the general shape of the side seam that we want to retain if we can, as closely as possible. So we're just going to put this aside for the moment. And then we're going to separate this. I've already pre-cut this, but you would cut this line using a rotary cutter or very good scissors. It's a nice even line. And separate the pattern. Then you're going to put some more pattern paper or tracing paper along one of the edges. And I use a very specific tape that is a removable tape. It's a little hard to find, but not impossible. You have to go to an office supply store. It's not going to be available at your local drugstore, probably. But if I make a mistake in getting the paper taped together, this tape will come off of this tissue and not rip it. So it's really a great tape to have on hand. The next thing I want to do is extend the straight of grain line through that new piece of paper. So here's the line, and I'm going to just extend it. That's a key point. And let's say that we want to lengthen this pattern 3 inches. I'm using my gridded ruler, which I can't live without. And I'm going to draw a new line. That's my 3-inch extension. So now, the match point. Where do you put this pattern? The match point is the straight of grain. Right here. So this extension line comes up and meets the original straight of grain line, and my long line is on my new drawn red line. You can see that the front edge, cut edge, is still the same. You just connect one edge to another edge. But look over here. Look how this is so offset. This is where things get really confusing and are hard to do. They're not hard to do, but if you don't know what you're doing, they're hard to do. So this trace line from the original shape gives me some sense of a shape to try to continue. I want to keep the same point below the arm's eye, and I want to keep the same point on the cutting line at the bottom of the curve. And then I'm going to put this trace line, meeting it, the top of it at the top of that dot. And I'm going to keep rotating this so that I can see that I've got a nice curve going here. Obviously, it won't meet the bottom point, but if I can eyeball from this point up to this point, those are your two match points, then I can emulate the original curve. I find that if I use a plastic hip curve, then I can place this and get almost the same line that I had before, but now I'm going to be able to extend it to that bottom point. So I am pretty much on top of the original trace line. I can now trace a new line, knowing that my curve is very much the same, and my cutting line will simply be the same, extra small going all the way down, extra small through the arm's eye, and that's my new shape. So you remember straight of grain is the match point, and you're trying to create a similar line from the original top point and the original bottom point to get your new curve. And that's it.